Hey, what's going on everyone? In this video, we're going to update the dependencies for YelpCamp from Colt Steele's The Web Developer Bootcamp on udemy.com. And basically, the most important thing that I want to do is address some breaking changes in something called Helmet, which deals with a lot of the security features for the application. There are a couple other things that we'll have to touch on along the way. I'm recording in my office with no air conditioning or fan on. It's like 98 degrees outside or something like that. So forgive me if I go a little bit quickly. You can always pause and go back, but I'll try to explain everything as we're going through. I'm inside of the YelpCamp directory. This is the state of the application as it was when the course was completed. So we'll go from there with all those versions and everything. So if I do an npm I or an npm install, it's going to run through the package.json and give us a node modules directory with all of the different npm packages that are required for this application to run properly. Make sure that you have MongoDB running in the background, or make sure that you're connected to a cloud-based MongoDB server like MongoDB Atlas. All right, so as you can see, we have a lot of vulnerabilities here. 5 moderate, 5 high, 5 critical. It's a lot. If we run node app.js, or in my case nodemon nodemon, we can see that it looks like it starts up okay. One thing that I like to have is in app.js at the very bottom. Here the console log says, hey, we're serving on port, and then it has the port. I just want to change this to serving at http:// localhost : and then you put the port in there, and it makes it to where I can just control click and get into the server like that. All right, so we can view our campgrounds from here. Looks like the campgrounds are loading. The images are not loading properly. It's probably because the ID for my Cloudinary is different than Colt's. Really easy way to fix that is just inside of app.js, we can scroll up to the helmet configuration here, and where we have this line under image source property inside this array, you can see that this ID needs to be one that matches my account. I've used YelpCamp so many different times. I have a bunch of different images from a bunch of different accounts, so I'm just going to remove it all together. For you personally, I would recommend that you put your ID here that you get from Cloudinary whenever you set up your Cloudinary. In my case, just to get things going, I'm going to go ahead and remove it, save it. And so what this will allow is any images from Cloudinary can be loaded on my site. So that could be an issue if someone's uploading some wacky images that you don't want in your app. So again, make sure you have your ID in there. Refresh, we get our images. Okay, great. So the application looks like it's working for the most part. We can click on these little, whatever you want to call them, markers, and then go to the show page and click that marker and log in, register, all that. All right, so now we need to start updating some stuff. So if we do an npm audit, it'll show us all the stuff that we have wrong. We can scroll through it. We can see all these different dependencies that need to be fixed. And so you can do an npm audit fix, and that'll get rid of a lot of stuff, but it's not going to do any breaking changes, which is a good thing. It's just going to do some minor upgrades, and then you have to manually go through and fix the remaining ones. But just to kind of clear out some of the issues so that we have less to deal with, we'll do an npm audit fix command. And when that's done running, we should have, I don't know, maybe about half as many vulnerabilities to deal with. Cool, so we have 6 vulnerabilities left. You can scroll up to see them. We've got one called Dicer, dependency of busboy, which is a dependency of Multer. Probably solved in the newest version of Multer. EJS, critical. You can force it. Basically, it's a breaking change. And EJS, the issue here is that it's EJS mate. It wants a newer version there. And so EJS is a dependency of EJS mate. Sanitize HTML, moderate. You can npm audit fix force, and it'll fix that. So let's try that npm audit fix -- force. Again, this is going to go from any like safe backwards compatible minor changes to major updates. So like from a version 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, etc. And so there's going to be syntax changes that you'll have to fix. So doing it the way we're doing it, not great. But I know what the issues are, and I can fix them very quickly. If you're not familiar with the issues, you need to be going to the repositories on GitHub for these various packages, looking at their change logs and figuring out what the breaking changes are between major versions so that you can go in and update them as needed. All right, so what we're left with here is this 3 high severity vulnerabilities from this dicer thing. Like I said, I think we can do this one with npm I multer at latest. And so that gets us down to 0 vulnerabilities. That doesn't mean that we have all the latest versions. So if you run npm outdated, it'll show you probably a pretty big list here of different things that need updating. And so we have Mapbox, Cloudinary, connect-mongo, .env, Express, Mongo sanitized, blah, blah. So it's a lot of stuff. What I would probably do, you can see like what we have currently, and then you go over to latest and you can see like, is it a minor change, which is the number in the middle, or is it a major change, number on the left? So for example, connect-mongo goes from 320 to 460. So there's a major change in there with several minor changes. And there's a couple of these that are like .env goes from 8 to 16. All right, so we need to update these. And I think if you do an npm update, it just does the safe versions. It won't actually do the major changes. So probably the simplest solution would be go through here and update these manually. So we can do like at npm install joy at latest, mongoose at latest, passport at latest, passport local mongoose at latest. I'm just going to let these couple run just in case I have any typos. I don't have to retype it all. So we'll do an npm outdated again to see what we have left. Looks like I have a typo in there. Okay, so npm, this is what the video is about, is this helmet one. So we'll get to it, but there's just so many other ones that need to be updated also. So npm I helmet at latest, and then we'll go ahead and do express session at latest, express mongo sanitize at latest, let those run. Go back to outdated, npm I express at, now at latest with express, I'm curious which version it'll give us. Okay, it'll give us 4.18.1. So I think version 5, which is a breaking change, is still in beta. It's been in beta forever. So forgot the I in there for npm install. Again, we can look at npm outdated. Anyway, I lost my train of thought there, but basically we don't want to update it to the newest version of Express, which is still in beta. We want to go with the stable version, which is 4.18.1, I believe. All right, so npm I.env at latest, connect mongo at latest, cloudinary at latest, and at mapbox / mapbox-sdk at latest. All right, so there are packages that you can use to just do all this for you. I think one of them is called like npm check update or something like that. And there may even be some built-in commands, like you might be able to force the npm update command. But in any event, this is one way to do it. So now if we do an npm outdated, we're not outdated. We can take a look at our package.json. Just cat it right here in the terminal, and you can see all these versions that we have now. All right, so because we did a bunch of breaking changes to newer versions of all these packages, we're going to have some serious issues when we run our app. So with Mongo running in the background, run nodaemon if you have it, or node app.js if you don't. First things first, it's saying class constructor MongoStore cannot be invoked without the new keyword. And it points at app.js line 22, this require connect-mongo session. Okay. So if we go up to line 22, this is passing in session here. Basically what we want to do is hop over to connect-mongo npm, go check out the docs. I like going directly to the GitHub instead of staying over here on npm. Scroll down, install, we already have it installed, so usage express, let's click on that. All right, so first things first, with Express 4, you say session is equal to require Express session, MongoStore is equal to require connect Mongo. In our app, we have Express session somewhere up here. It's probably right in front of me. There it is, right there on line 9. And then we have our MongoDB store is what we're calling it, just so we can get on board with what they use. We'll call it MongoStore. Is equal to require connect-mongo. Mind you, they are not doing what we have here where we pass the session in like that. However, they do an app.use and then they pass the session variable here, and then they pass the MongoStore in with the options to the store property. Probably different than how we're doing it now. So first things first, let's remove this session with the parens off the end of const MongoStore. All right. Somewhere in our application, we have a MongoDB store that's being used. Okay, here it is. This const store is equal to new MongoDB store. And then this store variable is getting used somewhere else right here on the session config. And then we have app session config. So the way they're doing it, they're saying app.use session. They pass in a object literal with all the, did not mean to click that, with all of this stuff here, all the options. In our case, we're putting the config in its own object into a variable, and then we're putting this new MongoDB store over here. Okay, so what's different? You can see the error here is saying MongoDB store is not defined. Okay, so we change it to MongoStore because we updated our variable name. And of course it doesn't like that. And the reason it doesn't like that is because MongoStore, if we require it, then we just use create when we point to it from store. In our case, when we pass it in, we're saying store is this store variable, and then we're pointing that to new MongoDB store. It's just not the same. So in their case, they're saying pass in this object with store pointing to MongoStore.create with some options. So what we want to do, instead of new, we want to do MongoStore.create and then save it like that. Something is still wacky. Here it says assertion failed. You must provide either a Mongo URL or something else. Alright, so for the advanced usage, they have session, pass in the option, store points to MongoStore create. MongoStore create takes an object with a Mongo URL that it points to. A little bit different. So in our MongoStore create, we did not have a Mongo URL, we had a URL. So we'll change it to Mongo capital U URL points to our DB URL variable, which is pointing to an environment variable. And it still doesn't like something that's happening here, but it looks like we might have gotten past that one. So what it's saying now is that MongoParseError options usecreateindex and usefindandmodify are not supported. And if you look on the right hand side here, you can see all these issues are dealing with Mongoose. Okay, fine. Where are we dealing with Mongoose? We scroll upwards and we have mongoose.connect on line 26. Takes the DB URL. DB URL is assigned here. It's either an environment variable or it's a local database that we have running with MongoDB on our computer. And in this case, it doesn't like, if you look at the error, usecreateindex or usefindandmodify. So that's our second option here, usecreateindex, nix it, and then the last one, usefindandmodify, get rid of that. So if we save that and we scroll down, now it says that the database is connected and it's serving at localhost 3000. So if we follow this with a control click, it's telling us a new error before we even go look at the browser. Current user is not defined. So the issue here is that we updated, and I don't know, I think my friend Daryl found that the solution to this, it would have taken most people forever to figure this out. But basically what's happening here is if you turn our server off and we open up our Mongo shell, if you're on Atlas, you need to go to Atlas and look in your dashboard and look at your database collections. So I'm going to use YelpCamp here and then show my collections. And I have a collection here called sessions. Well, we've just updated our sessions And so basically what's happening here, I believe, is that the format of the older sessions is no longer working, but they're still stored in the database from when we had the older version of Express Session. Now we have a new version of Express Session. So now what we need to do is delete this collection so that it can get created fresh. So we don't need these sessions. We can do db.sessions. Probably, I think, drop. That says true. Let's do a db.sessions.find and see if it gives us anything. Make sure I have the correct syntax. Looks like it's empty. So I think it's db.sessions.drop. Should work. Let's go ahead and exit out of here and run the server again. And we'll head over to here. This is where the error message was. We'll refresh it. The page loads. We're not getting that current user error. So if you get that current user error after you've updated Express Session, the npm package, to the latest version, then go ahead and clear out your sessions. Okay, so that's a big one that gets people hung up. All right, so now let's head over to our campgrounds index. Cannot populate path popupText because it's not in your schema. Honestly, I don't know where this code came from. It might have just been something that was left behind. But if you go to your controllers, campgrounds.js, and you look up at the very top in your index method that's being exported here, lines 8 through 11. Line 9, you can see campground.find populate popupText. Not sure why that's there. Might have been needed in an older version. Might just be something that got accidentally put in there when the app was being created. But if you remove it and you go back to your app and you refresh, the app works. We're still having issues, right? Where's our map? Should be right here. And where are our images? They should be right here. At this point, you're not going to see anything in the terminal that's helpful. So if we go back to the application and we open up the developer console, we can see we've got some error messages. So we're going to use these to guide us the rest of the way. So the first one here is failed to load resource, net ERR or error blocked by response, not same origin after defaulted to same origin by COEP. COEP here is extremely important. All these, if you look on the right side, are dealing with what looks to be Mapbox, possibly Cloudinary also. Yeah, these last couple are for Cloudinary. So we're dealing with something called COEP. Now, in the newest version of Helmet, which if you go back to app.js and you scroll down, we have Helmet in here, app.useHelmet. What this does is this by default uses 15 different middlewares that are they have all these different security settings, and you're just getting the default settings. You just say app.useHelmet, give me the default settings, and if you want to customize them, you can. If you want to disable them, you can. You can look through the Helmet documentation to figure that out. Let's go ahead and jump over to helmet.js, make sure I'm spelling that correctly. And on their website, we'll go to, not the changelog, give me the, where's your GitHub? Okay, this will work. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, let's just assume there's 15. These 15 different middlewares are the 15 middlewares that you get when you do app.useHelmet. So this is great. It bundles them up all together. You don't have all this code. If you want to drill down into each one of these, you can. The one that's giving us the issue is this cross-origin embedder policy, COEP. Okay, that's that same error there, COEP. Basically, we're trying to bring in stuff from Mapbox, which is out there on some CDN, Content Developer Network, or whatever it's called, that's not from our server, right? I'm looking at the microphone like I should be looking at the camera. Same thing for Cloudinary. Cloudinary and Mapbox, two different services out there, APIs that we're connecting to, and we're pulling stuff from them. So we're making requests to them so that we can embed their content into our page. But we have something called cross-origin resource policy, which basically says like, hey, you can change it however you want. There's different configurations. But basically we're saying we only trust stuff that comes from our server. We don't want anything coming in from other people's servers, except we do, right? So we do and we don't. Well, the simplest solution, this is not the solution that I recommend, I just want to show you what you can do, is to take this cross-origin embedder policy go over to app.useHelmet, open up an object inside of there, pass in that property name and set it to false. So basically you're saying, hey, don't even use this COEP policy. And so then when you go back over here and you refresh, hey, we got our map back and we got our pictures. Great. So all we do is disable COEP, but that's not good. We want that security. So don't do that. Go ahead and get rid of that. Leave your app.useHelmet like it was before. The solution here is to enable CORS explicitly, set it explicitly to anonymous on your different scripts or images or links, whatever it is that is making these requests out to these third-party servers. We need to enable it explicitly. And so what we can do is go views. We'll start out in layouts, boilerplate, because this is where we're bringing in Mapbox. Now this is Mapbox GL.js version 1.12.0. There's a newer version. So let's do Mapbox GL.js real quick. And one of these, either of the first two is probably fine. I'm looking for the installation. It's on the left. Scroll down. Here they are, these two, the script and the link. That's what I want. You can copy this. And so you can take it back here, find the ones that we had in there previously, and replace them. And so now we have version 2.8.2. Still going to have the same problem. And so the way that we solve this, you can do it one of two ways. You can either take the JavaScript file at that URL and the CSS file at that URL, these two links, and you can download them and put them on your server underneath public JavaScripts for the JavaScript file and public style sheets for the style sheets file. And then you update the script and the link so that it looks inside of the style sheets directory and inside of the JavaScript directory, respectively, for those two files that you pulled down. That's one way. And what that does is it just says these files are being served from my server. Same contents as they have from the CDN, but they're being served from our server, so we trust them. That's one possible solution. The other possible solution, if you want to continue using the CDN, is just to go in here and say cross origin. That's it. So what cross origin does is it's the same as saying cross origin is equal to an empty string, or that's actually the same as saying cross origin is equal to anonymous. So the simplest thing to do is just to say cross origin. You need to do that on both of these. Cross origin, save it, and go back to your application and refresh. Voila, it's working. Let's clear out these errors just to make sure there's no more errors. And there are. So we got, this was Mapbox, right? We have the script and the style sheet for Mapbox. We added cross origin to both of the script and the link tag, and that solved the Mapbox issue. What it didn't solve is the Cloudinary stuff. So anywhere where we have Cloudinary images coming in, we need to also add cross origin. Now, you can't, technically you could serve the files from your server, but that defeats the purpose of using Cloudinary, right? So what we want to do is go to where we are using Cloudinary. And so we can do a edit, find in files, Control-Shift-H, and look for Cloudinary. And we want to see where Cloudinary is being used inside of our views. So we're not really interested in anything except for the view files. So index.ejs is the only place I'm seeing it. All right, so here we have a hard-coded file here, which I do believe is like a placeholder image. Let me just select that. We can jump over here and look at that. So it's a placeholder campground image in case the user forgets to upload a campground. All right, so this is an image tag. It's on 2 lines here just because this URL is so long. So we're actually going to break it into 3 lines. So right before that closing caret, after the quotation for the URL from the source tag, we're going to say cross origin. You can leave the equals, double quotes, doesn't matter. You can remove it if you want. And so just make sure that that goes between the source, its URL, the closing quotation for the URL, and the closing caret for the image tag itself. Now, that's not the only image, right? That's the else statement here in this index.ejs. We also have an if campground images.length, meaning if the campground has images, then go ahead and use the 0th images URL, so the first image in the array of images. So that would be like your thumbnail for that particular campground. So then same thing here, we're just going to add cross origin. I'm going to get rid of the equals double quotation. You can leave it if you want. So that's part of what we need. I think we have some other places where we have images, right? So we refresh here and that works. I'm seeing these images, and if we clear this out and we refresh, great, that's working. If we go home, this image works fine, no errors here. If we go to campgrounds, we get our map, we get our image. If we go to view, whatever this one is, we're having the same issue here. So we need to go find where this image is being embedded. So if we go back to our views directory, campgrounds, show.ejs, and then look for that image source, image URL, you can put cross origin anywhere. I'll just put it at the very end after the alt is equal to whatever you want the alt to equal to. And we will save it. So if we go back and refresh, boom, it gives us our image. You clear out these errors over here in the console and refresh. No more errors. So now we have our images on the show page. A little slider here, it's kind of nice. And you go back to campgrounds. We have our map, and we have our image. Show page also has a map. You click on it, it has a little pop-up. Same thing if you go to campgrounds index. These little clusters will give you these pop-ups once you get down to the actual markers. And I want to say that is it. There's a couple other things I think that you could drill down into and work on. I think there's like a redirect after you log in issue. We can look at it real quick. I might just have to address it in a different video. But so if I log in, Ian, I give it a password, and I go to a show page. Okay, so here you have the review if you're logged in. If you log out, okay, perfect. Glad we logged out. We'll address what I was just going to talk about in a second, because in this updated code base it actually doesn't matter. But here, rec.logout requires a callback function. This is the newest version of Passport. And so if we go to our controllers, users.js, and scroll all the way down to our logout method, we have rec.logout. The change here is that they updated the way that we log out to require a callback. So basically, you have a callback here. We're just going to do an arrow function with no argument. And now, if you're inside the callback, that means that the logout has run. And so we're going to take the flash and the redirect, and we're going to move them up inside the callback. Save that. Go back here. Go home or what have you. We're still logged in. Now if we click logout, now it logs us out and it says the goodbye message when it redirects us back to the campgrounds. So that's good. In the newest version of Passport, they changed the way that they store the session. They used to be that they had the same session ID, but that opened you up for a vulnerability and attack. So they changed it. So previously, when you would go to the campground show page and you were not logged in, there'd be a button here that would say, leave a new review. And you would click it, and then if you weren't logged in, it would just take you to the login page. You log in, it'd redirect you back. Well, we just removed that in the final version because it didn't really make any sense to have that. But let's say if you went to /reviews/new on this campground, or I don't even know what the URL is, let me double check. Routes, reviews, post. Oh, okay, so here's what happened. There is no reviews new. The review form is actually inside of the campground show page now. So the issue before was that it would take you to a separate review form, and then if you weren't logged in, it would actually redirect you to the login. You'd log in and it would redirect you back to the campground in question that you want to review. That issue is no longer around because we moved the, if you go look at views, campgrounds, show.ejs, we moved the review form into the campground show page itself. So if you scroll down somewhere in here, you have this if current user, meaning if the user's logged in, then give them the form for leaving a review. And so now, basically, if a user's not logged in, they won't see the review option. And then if they want to, they can log in. So if you wanted to, you could add a leave a review button that would still require them to log in and then redirect them back here, and that would present a new issue, and that's that the way that we were doing previously, we would store the ID or whatever of the campground, I think, in the session. So you're logged out, you have a session with a certain ID, you try to leave a review on a campground, we say, hey, before we redirect you to go ask you to log in, we need to keep track of which campground you're trying to review. So let's take that ID of the campground and store it on the session. Once you log in, then we can check and see if that ID exists. If it does, then we can assume that you need to redirect back to a campground with that ID. Great, that all used to work, but now with the way Passport is and the way they store sessions, they generate a new ID for every session. So if you're a guest, an anonymous user on the website, you have one ID. If you log in, it clears that session, I believe, and it creates a new session with a different ID. That way, someone can't hijack your session and log into like your social media account or your bank account, things like that. It's very important. And so there needs to be a different way to do that redirect. That is for a separate video. In this case, we just got everything updated with the newest version of Helmet and all the other packages. We can talk about the redirect issue later, but for now, go ahead and run through this video. If you have any issues, let me know in the comments below, and we will catch you in the next video. Thanks a lot.